in the most simplified form, I think the matrix in itself is ever evolving, because ultimately, if what is most important to the consumer is changing. Sometimes it could be how interesting that video is, therefore I stay on it to get that brand awareness that you capture. Sometimes it's because how clear you are in terms of your product comparison, or how many other people are interested. I mean, these days there are things like swaps. There are things like there are many other community sites that advocates sort of like a voting or an auction process, and it's about how the rest thinks, and ultimately we always go by that group majority. It's almost democracy in its basis, that if everybody thinks this is good, there's probably some reason, therefore let's take a look at it. I think that in itself, in a layman context, is what we track. I mean, in terms of matrix, I think we sometimes do tend to overdo it, especially when it comes to being marketeers. We do need to have an answerable matrix to report to our bosses, to our managers, and all. And we kind of picked out all the commands. We will pick up traditional metrics like impressions, clicks, registrations. I mean, all this are genuinely, they are important, but it might be even more important to come from a consumer point of view and ask yourself, does the number of times I see it still matters as much as it used to when I had TV then and I had no internet? Or am I looking at all these different channels and they all serve a whole bunch of impressions? So does the traditional media measurement still stay? Now that's the first question. The other bit is, we always talk about duration and how accurate the entire duration of the engagement might be. But ultimately, you might engage right now with that particular platform. You might go through multiple different media channels to see, say for example, you go to work this morning. You take a bus to work, you see a bus stop ad that says the latest iPhone from M1 or StarHub. The next moment when you get onto your bus, you see a whole bunch of kids all on their iPhone playing games, talking to their friends, checking their emails. And thereafter, when you get off your bus, you kind of walk past one of those outdoor digital signboards that has an iPhone advertisement playing. And the next moment, you have a friend coming to you, talking to you, showing you some stuff on his iPhone, on the latest discussion at work. And by the time you sit down, if you ask me, is then the iPhone the most practical gadget you should have on your hands right now to lead the right lifestyle for your business needs? Is it recommended by friends? Is it something that's going to be supported by huge vendors in the market? Probably yes. Does any of this intentionally was planted? Was it only one of it that convinced the consumer that iPhone should be the phone to buy? Probably not. And I think in the similar context of measurements, as we try to break them up logically into different metrics and into different channels, we try to break traditional advertising into media, to creative, to PR, to direct marketing. Ultimately, they may be all but the same, if I could even suggest that, because the metrics that you use sometimes are universal, and a lot of the times there's a complexity and it's cyclical. Why do I say it's cyclical? Because when you approach the entire comms planning process, you will be thinking to yourself, what do I know about this consumer? What do I want them to know? What do I need to ask? And then you come up with a whole brainstorm of all the excellent brains coming down, sitting down, whether it's marketeers, whether it's sales, whether it's PR, sitting down together, come up with that great idea, that great insight that the consumer wants, and that will actually be the tipping point for them buying your product. Thereafter, you architect your entire plan, program or campaign in that basis. But after you finish that entire plan, traditionally you will stop there. It's like buying a print ad. You buy a print ad, you post-production 2 hours before time, send it off, do a color set, and then check for the final approval and FA, and off it goes. And thereafter, you're out to enjoy your holidays because it's all done. We wait patiently, do a survey, and hope that all goes well. But today, if you're looking at digital media, you're looking at things that are all trackable. You look at matrix. It's a tricky thing. It's a good thing. It's also a tricky thing. When you finish the plan, there are then 3 more steps that you need to take. one, you collect the data, you reanalyze the data, and most importantly, and what's always lacking, is actually feeding that same set of data back into your original plan and starting to refine from there. This entire cyclical process of refining the marketing mix could be a case of to the speed of a weekly basis or even a daily basis for some of the channels. But ironically, I think touch our heart and ask ourselves how many of us actually even do it on a yearly basis. Now that's going to be tricky, man. I think whether it's B2B and then whether it's B2C in the aspects, bringing it broader again, I think it's going to be a case whereby definitely no segregation between what we call traditional or digital or web marketing or interactive marketing. I believe they're all but the same. Yes, the components are all, I would say, if you put them as digital marketing B2B, it just means that it's trackable. It just also means that a company needs to focus on on a whole bunch of things that all are accountable, all can be tracked and have metrics around it and have accountability around them. We all try to draw beautiful charts of them funneling in a linear direction, but ultimately we all know in our hearts that they're actually cross-references and they're actually cyclical and they're being weaved together, a huge matrix of how we define our performance results. And I actually think that's going to be the crux of B2B marketing, and probably in the next 5 to 10 years, platforms that initially evolve, I think, coming from a technology background and coming from a programmer's background, we all think of the latest gadgets, we think of the latest technology that could be implemented, whether it's HD video that we talked about 5 years back, whether it's interactive video that actually allows an engagement, or digital signboards that allows you to actually do a touch screen and interact with the overall ad. We create all these technologies, but then I think the tipping point for any technology to be relevant to the consumer is when the point whereby there is actually a business need for it. And I think if you look across all the technologies that are developed, and then you look across the trend of how our consumers are maturing across the different markets, that's why at different point of time, I think a different country will pick out different technology to fit their needs. I think that is what we need to really observe, and we need to be really be able to spot when the business trend meets the technology trend, and that's going to be the sweet spot where we kind of interact. And we pick out the best channels to speak to the consumers about what they need or do not need in their lifestyle. Never ask for a case study, which will probably kill a lot of people who needs to prove their boss that this actually has a matrix around it. Because if you have a case study, means it's been done before, but you know that in every single engagement it's going to be different. Yes, you have a point of reference, but we all know in the sense of sales and marketing that there is a first mover advantage. Some will argue that it's a second mover advantage. Nevertheless, if you're the second man, you might not have the first guy's case study. But you do know one truth of fact is, if you are there first, you're going to be able to leverage the maximum profit margins. And in any case, whether it's a business, whether it's an initiative, whether it's a product launch, and what channel you choose to use, maybe it's time you think about how you weave together what you know versus what the business needs, and create your own workflow and get like-minded people to think around that entire spectrum. Yes, you still bet a certain amount of subjectivity to the matrix that you're going to get, and you actually literally take a bet. But I have tried many times, and I do believe that is the best way to get your returns. Because traditionally, if you want a one-to-one, there are a lot of channels that you can use right now, and it's been trial and tested. You don't actually have to do anything. But that said, realistically, you should always try, I would say, weave together something new within your current things that you know, because then if you already have fixed channels that are going to bring you fixed returns, now that's an answerable result to your boss. The other 20%, if you don't try something new, you're going to realize that over the span of 5 to 10 years in your working career, in terms of marketing, you're going to end up with probably only one channel left that you know. How is that going to work to save your job? Now that's going to be tough. So that's my key advice for anybody who wants to do not just digital marketing, not just B2B, but marketing as a whole. And if these days we could say sales support as a whole, because ultimately it's just getting closer and closer. In the end, it's about the company makes the money, the sales guy has an open opportunity to talk to the customer, the marketing generates this pool of potential customer that you can leverage on, and if you work it backwards, these are the things we need to keep in mind. And then look at the overall customer landscape and ask yourself, are they behaving that way? Yes, we might not as a business be as nimble, as smooth, as fast as consumer, but that said, if you do not keep that 20% you and try to get as close to them as possible, will you ever get there without that first step?